streaming live on the Global Star Radio Network. Please stand by. Doug and Joe will be back momentarily.
And welcome back to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We got a special treat for you folks. We have Mr. Robert Blevins. He's the author of a book, Into the Blast, but he's also the head of adventurebooksofseattle.com. He is one of the foremost, and I believe the foremost expert in D.B. Cooper. Folks, you remember D.B. Cooper? Sounds familiar to some of the youngsters out there. Oh, I don't remember that. Or if it does sound familiar, you got to go back in time to November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, America's first skyjacking and the only unsolved, in quotation marks, skyjacking in American history. We're going to be getting into that with Mr. Robert Blevins. This is so intriguing. I mean, this is absolutely mind-blowing stuff when you see the mechanism behind this with the FBI and all this. So Robert is joining us by video, but before we get to Robert, I do want to mention that Minuteman Stove. Have you gone there yet, folks? MinutemanStove.com. MinutemanStove.com. Folks, the best rocket stove in the market. MinutemanStove.com. They are absolutely 100% the best. And you know, we all have preps, right? We all have preps. You get your long-term storable food and all things ready in the event of a disruption of power. But you forget sometimes, well, what am I going to cook the food on? Or the rocket stove is the most, in my view, the best thing to have for cooking, for heating water, for doing whatever. It takes a little bit of wood. It's like a 50 caliber ammo can that's got refractory insulation on the outside. It's about 14 pounds, sits on the coffee table. It doesn't get hot on the outside. It directs the heat right to where it needs to be. It's one of the Minuteman rocket stove is the best rocket stove out of all of them on the market. That's why we selected Minuteman. We use it. We have put it through its paces. It's a great deal. Minuteman rocket stove makes the best rocket stoves. They're made in the United States by U.S. workers, and they also actually, they're being used alongside our people in Iraq and Afghanistan. But the Minuteman rocket stove is, to me, is the Cadillac of rocket stoves. You go there, you get fire starters as well. The things to start the tinder. Oh, those things are powerful. But visit MinutemanStove.com. That's MinutemanStove.com. And even after Christmas, if folks, makes a good gift after Christmas as well. If we'll say if you're got some extra money and you want to fix your add to your preps, MinutemanStove.com. That's MinutemanStove.com. All right, now I'm going to take you back in time a little bit to November 24th, 1971. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and there was a flight 305, Northwest Airlines flight 305. Guy by the name of Dan Cooper got on flight 305 and handed the stewardess, or at the time stewardess, we're still allowed to call them stewardesses at that time, a note. Said that he had a bomb on board and he wanted $200,000, and that began this odyssey of D.B. Cooper. And it's interesting, I find it very interesting if you look back and you watch the Walter Cronkite reports and back then from 1971. A couple of things struck me, of course. 1971, you could walk on with like anything. They had no security whatsoever. Domestic flights, you could walk on with a bomb, a gun, a knife, a kitchen stove strapped to your back, and they wouldn't even, no worries. But number two, it's interesting because D.B. Cooper really didn't start out as D.B. Cooper. It was Dan Cooper, D.A. Cooper, as referenced by Walter Cronkite. And then they said a newspaper reported the incorrect initial B, and suddenly the myth of or the mysticism of D.B. Cooper came to be. And Mr. Blevins, of course, being an editor, he was is a book editor, and author of many science fiction books. But in his capacity as editor, came across some information from PI, New York PI, Skipp Porteous. And looking at this information, back a number of years ago, became intrigued. And because Mr. Blevins lived right in the backyard, essentially, of where this all took place, D.B. Cooper's, where this all took place, Skipp Porteous and Robert Blevins kind of began working together. Now, that's kind of just a general summary. But the important thing here is what Mr. Blevins found. His findings. When you compare his findings to what the FBI is telling you, and his findings to compare to what the History Channel might tell you, or any other of these nonsensical videos out there, in my view, Robert Blevins takes it to an entirely new level in terms of the investigative bar. And that's why I'm so grateful to have him on. Mr. Blevins, thank you so much for appearing on our program.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It's nice to be here today.
Well, I'll tell you something. You've done an immense amount of work on this over the past. Well, since John told me that you were going to come on, I just kind of immersed myself in the story of D.B. Cooper, and man, this is still classified as America's unsolved skyjacking. Yet, I believe you did solve it. I believe it, based on everything I've seen. You make a pretty compelling case that you have identified the hijacker, not only the hijacker, but the hijacker's assistants. Well, why don't you go back to, first of all, by way of introduction, why don't you tell our audience how you got involved in this? Because I really didn't do that justice. But how did you get involved in the investigation of this matter to begin with?
Well, I was just doing my normal job running adventure books, and people would come with manuscripts once in a while, and then I'd accept them or reject them, perhaps. And Mr. Porteous sent me one about the D.B. Cooper case, and I started reading it, and I hadn't heard of the person he was naming, and I thought there was a few things missing from his book. I said, well, you need to interview the people that this person, your suspect, knew best, and you haven't done that, and maybe you should, and then come back when you do that. Mm-hmm. And then he said, you live in Auburn, Washington, and our suspect is from Bonnie Lake, Washington. That's like 6 miles from here. He said, why don't I send you some confidential files on everybody that the suspect knows, and you can go do the interviews yourself. And I thought, well, I'd never been asked to do that before, but I thought, okay, because I was interested in the D.B. Cooper case. I knew I was like a sophomore in high school when it happened, and the SeaTac airport's only 10, 12 miles from here. So I went out and did these interviews, and I didn't really think I was going to find anything, but I was pretty surprised later by the results.
Yeah, it's amazing how you methodically took the information and just went step by step by step. And not only were you methodical, but you were tenacious as well, because I'd seen many of your videos, and or where you were cited, I should say, and you had interviewed somebody. You had interviewed one witness 7 times. We'll be getting into that, but so that's how you got into it. So, all right, yeah. So, okay, so here we are, 1971, November 24th, 1971. Tell us what happened with Northwest Airlines Flight 305.
Well, it was a pretty ordinary day in November, and a lot of people have said there was a big storm that day, and that's not true. I've looked at the historical weather records from Portland and Seattle. It was like mid-40s, ground speed wind maybe 5 to 8 miles an hour, pretty much all day. So anyway, the flight landed in Portland. It had come all the way out from Minnesota, and I think it made one stop in Montana. And this gentleman, Dan Cooper, went up to the ticket counter and paid $20 plus tax for a one-way ticket to Seattle. It's like a 30-minute flight. He got on board, and he went and sat near the back. I think it was in 18C, row 18C. And after they got into the air, then he motioned for stewardess Florence Schaffner to come over to him, and he handed her a note. And she put it in her pocket and didn't look at it. She figured it was just another guy's phone number, somebody trying to hit her up on a date.
Remember, folks, this is the 70s, okay? 71, yeah, okay.
Anyway, so he called her back over and he said, Miss, I think you should read the note, And she opens it up and it says, you are being hijacked. I have a bomb. I want you to sit next to me. And anyway, it kind of went from there. He made a demand for $200,000, 4 parachutes. The plane went into a holding pattern around Seattle while they were rushing around trying to get the money. They got it finally from Seafirst Bank. They were able to run all the bills really quickly through what they called back then a record DAC machine and get the numbers.
Okay.
They packaged the bills roughly about 100 to a bundle, $100 bills, and then they brought it to him. And
well, and that's interesting too, because okay, so you've got this aircraft. It was on a 30-minute flight, the leg from what was it, Portland to Seattle, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So the flight was going to last about 36 minutes on average, and
Yeah.
it was during and this DB Cooper, man identified as DB Cooper, gets on in Portland, and yeah, and in the process, and you said it well. He hands this note to the stewardess. Now, another thing too, I like to kind of set the stage. Here's a guy dressed in business attire. He had a clip-on tie, and he sat and he said, as you said, in the back of the plane, he was drinking bourbon. They served him drinks, drinking bourbon, smoking Raleigh cigarettes. This is when you could smoke on the plane. And yeah, hands this note to the stewardess, and of course, oh goodness, this is not going to, yeah, he wants 200 grand plus 200 grand. So anyway, so yeah, so it goes in the holding pattern, and contrary to, and this is important too, contrary to what the many of the History Channel people and some books and other things say, it was not a bad day there. It wasn't raining and the winds weren't oppressive or anything like that. It was just a normal day before Thanksgiving weather-wise. All right. And I find it interesting, Mr. Blevins, that, my goodness, there was really little argument. The airline said, okay, we'll give them the money, and arranged to do that through the bank. I mean, there was really little discussion. Yeah, get the money, get it together.
That was because of the head of Northwest Airlines, Donald Nyrop, told everybody, no, we're not going to risk the plane. The plane's worth millions of dollars, and the lives of the passengers or the crew. He wasn't going to go there. He said, we'll just give him the money and what he wants and let him go.
Yeah, and $200,000 back in '71. You got to figure most people were only making 100 and some bucks a week, on average. So that was big money back then. But the thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong. So he wanted $200,000. This DB Cooper.
Yeah.
They were going to. In fact, they said, okay, we'll give it to you. And here's a little footnote that I found in my research. He really didn't specify in what denomination, so they ended up giving them all 20s, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, let me think. Was it 20s?
Yeah, I think
so.
20s. Yeah. So instead of getting, hundreds and 50s and such, supposedly non-sequential $20 bills, and in essence, if you want to know how much that weighs, 23 pounds worth of bills. 23 pounds.
Okay.
All right. So, and they put it in a duffel bag. Okay. So what happened? So the plane was in the holding pattern, and they were arranging to get the money. And this is about what time is this? Because the plane took off, at 2:45, I guess, in the afternoon that day?
I don't know the exact time they circled, but I think they landed sometime after 4:30.
Okay. All right.
And
yeah.
Cooper said a couple of interesting things while they were circling. He told one of the stewardesses, looks like Tacoma down there, which kind of told. And he also questioned the amount of time it was taking to get the parachutes. He thought they would bring them from McCord Air Force Base. I don't think he asked for them to be brought from McCord, but he thought they would come from there. And he said it only takes X amount of minutes to get from McCord to the airport. I mean, it's kind of like he lived around here,
So he's familiar with the terrain.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He had to be.
All right. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, again, 45 years after this, we're not sure. Fascinating story. All right. So ultimately, after this circling maneuver, so he requests 200 grand and 4 parachutes. Why 4? I mean, why not 2 or 3?
Well, I don't know if he actually said why, but most people believe he wanted to make the people on the ground believe that he might take a member of the crew with him.
Okay.
Because he asked for 2 main parachutes and 2 front reserves. So it was actually parachutes for 2 people. And he did that, we believe, so that they wouldn't send him non-working parachutes.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
And is it relevant to ask where the parachutes came from? Because I'm just curious.
That's been documented really well. I've seen the FBI's document on it. Now, for years, the man who packed them, a guy named Earl Cossey, claimed that he delivered them, he owned them. That's not true. He did pack at least some of them at Issaquah Sky Sports when he worked there. Two of the parachutes came from a guy named Norman Hayden, who had a business in Kent, Washington. And Northwest actually arranged on a rental for them.
All right.
And he sent, what did he send? He sent a main and a reserve. And the other two they got from Issaquah Sky Sports from a guy named Lynn Emmerich. And the Washington State Patrol delivered those to the airport. And the other two from Mr. Hayden were delivered by, he got a cab to come to his business in Kent and he put the parachutes in the back and gave the cab driver money and said, take these to the Northwest counter at SeaTac. And they're off they went.
Wow.
Right. He actually got one of them back years later, too. The one that wasn't used.
The one that wasn't used. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we are. Flight 305. Flight 305. 305. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can talk. Anyway, circling and then ultimately lands at SeaTac. And so what happens after it lands? And here's Cooper in the aircraft with the other passengers. The aircraft lands. The demands are made for parachutes and money. What happens then?
Well, he did let he allowed the pass. Well, he said he wanted to get the plane refueled. He wanted his money. He wanted the parachutes. They started stalling him a little bit on the fuel truck, saying that, oh, it's too cold and the fuel's freezing up or something. And he got a little miffed. He didn't get really angry, but he said, let's get this show on the road, or something. Right. And so they finally, and the crew was nervous too. And co-pilot Bill Radizak called down and said, look, fill this thing up. This guy's serious. And so anyway, the passengers deplane. Stewardess Tina Mucklow, apparently the blonde-haired stewardess, went out and made trips, and she brought in the bank bag with the money and the 4 parachutes. She just dragged them up there. Then they shut all the doors. Cooper had already shut, I think, most of the windows, the window covers.
Yeah.
So snipers couldn't get him, and turned off at least some of the lights. And he also asked for meals for the crew, which I thought was interesting, that he would care about them, but they did bring meals on board for the crew too.
Okay, and we probably should tell the folks that when he landed at SeaTac, that was not obviously he had and we're gonna get in the bomb too, but he supposedly had this bomb on board, and he landed at SeaTac. He was planning on, or he told the crew and told everyone that was not obviously he was planning on flying out of there, so he wanted to fill up in the money in the chutes. I should go back and ask you about the bomb. Because obviously he showed the bomb, which he carried on in a briefcase, to one of the, and this is going to be important later, to Tina Mucklow, the stewardess at the time, and showed her what was in there, right? And I think it. Yeah,
well, I think it could have been Flo, but one of them did get a look. Yeah, he showed it to one of them.
All right, and it was what did it look like?
Excuse me. It was a small briefcase. He only cracked it open for a few seconds. Stewardess said she saw a couple of red sticks in there.
Made her think it was dynamite.
Wires and a battery attached to it. And then he shut it.
Yeah. Okay. So if I was looking at that, I think dynamite, red sticks. Whoops. Yeah. So.
Well, the FBI always thought, at least Ralph Himmelsbach, the first agent that investigated the case, thought that he was certain that the dynamite sticks were fake, because he said dynamite isn't generally red. He said it's tan colored. Mm-hmm. And I actually looked that up, and yeah, he was right. I mean, dynamite isn't red like it is in the movies. It's actually tan, like a manila envelope color.
Okay. Well, nonetheless, the idea was, this guy has a bomb, and I'm glad you brought the name up, Ralph Himmelsbach. Himmelsbach. Yeah, he was the guy that happened to be on duty at the time back in 1971. Right, he's in his office. They call him up and say, "Hey, Ralph, get over to SeaTac. You got a hijacking in progress." So he was assigned the case, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the crew. Okay. So the Flight 305 was landed at SeaTac. Actually, D.B. Cooper, the guy known as D.B. Cooper, his demands were met. 4 parachutes, as you said, brought in, 200 grand in 20s, 23-pound bag, brought into the plane. He let the passengers go.
Mm-hmm.
How nice of him. And kept the crew. Demanded refueling, got meals for the crew and flight crew. And okay, ready to rock and roll. So now here we are, ready to rock, ready to go. So
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Well, he made stewardess Tina Mucklow stay on board, but the dark-haired stewardess Florence Schaffner and the senior stew Alice Hancock, they were able to leave. The flight crew had to stay.
Okay.
So it was just the 4 guys up front in the cockpit and Tina and him in the back.
All right.
When they took off.
All right. And again, this is a Boeing 727 aircraft, and you have to think back in 1971 too. These aircraft. Now think about this because this is important. These aircraft were used in Vietnam. In some recon missions or taking and providing materials in Vietnam and such, and they had a backward. This is one of the only planes, I believe, the 727 had a rear-facing staircase that you could open in flight that wouldn't really be problematic or that problematic. It was tried it was used in Vietnam in their whatever they did there, right?
Yeah, I think except for they took the stairs off and it was more like a slide, but yeah, it was the same thing.
Same,
down
yeah.
in the back. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And folks, we're talking to Robert Blevin. His website, of course, is adventurebooksofseattle.com. He's got a page dedicated to the D.B. Cooper investigation, which I think everyone should check out. I spent a lot of time there. I was fascinated by this, but we're going back to 1971, November 24th. We just passed the 45th anniversary. FBI says, hey, we don't know. Well, I think they do. And I'll tell you what, Robert Blevin, for everyone to know, he put together a report, gave it to the FBI, and I'll tell you something, it's compelling. And looking at his work product, I would say, man, he's got it. He knows what's going on here. Robert Levin's got the idea, or it's got the goods. So okay, so we're about 2.5 minutes out from a break. So just to be clear, we're ready to rock. Cooper, the flight crew, one stewardess is left on the plane. They leave SeaTac, and what happens then? What does he say? Where's he going?
Well, the first thing was he wasn't real happy about the way the money was delivered. He was a little miffed about it. They gave it to him in like the same kind of leather knapsack kind of thing that armored car guards carry in and out of banks, which looks really obvious, right? They do. Mm-hmm. And he wanted it in a knapsack, he said, and they didn't bring it that way. Well, okay. He opens up the bag. The money's there. He's real happy. He offers Tina 2 or 3 of the bundles, and she says, kind of makes a joke. She says, we're not allowed to take tips. So he puts the money back, I guess. And anyway, Tina also offered him a piece of paper that had instructions on it on how to use the parachute. And he looked at her and he said, I don't need that. Uh-huh. And he looked at the 2 parachutes. There was the Pioneer Sport model, and there was the kind of pit bull of parachutes C9 canopy in an NB8 container. That's a military parachute. It's a real tough one. He looked at it, he grabbed it right up. And he put it on. He knew. Tina said later, told the FBI, he put it on like he knew what he was doing. And he took the other main. I think it was he took the working reserve parachute, and he popped the ripcord and he cut lines off of it and he tied those to the money bag, wrapped it several times, and he was tying that on a longer cord around his waist, so it would like hang off his waist.
Yeah, and think about that. So he selected, and the parachute that he did select had significance because it wasn't a military parachute, as you said, or
yes,
okay,
yeah,
all right. So it was not the best one. Like if you weren't familiar, you wouldn't necessarily pick that chute, and I'm not sure I'd pick any chute, but anyway, you wouldn't pick that one. You'd have to kind of know what you're doing. So that kind of suggested he knew parachutes, right? Yeah. All right. And then he used the cords and straps from the other parachute to tie the money around his body and stuff. So obviously, yeah, he's fixing to to hop out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you tell the crew to go? I mean, what destination?
Well, at first he said, I want to go to Mexico. They told him, well, you want us to fly with the flaps down and go slower and maybe with the stairs down. We can't make it that far. So the crew consulted with Northwest Airlines on the ground. Northwest said, you can make it as far as Reno, then you're going to have to land. And so they told him, well, we can get you to Reno. And he said, okay, Reno.
And that's important to point out too. Obviously, D.B. Cooper, the man known to be, or as D.B. Cooper said, you're going to fly with the flaps down at 15 degrees, and
that's right.
the landing gear down, and that's how you're going to fly. So he was about 200 knots, I guess, roughly is how fast the plane would go at that, and at a lower altitude. So the conditions upon leaving Seattle Tacoma Airport, he set the conditions: flaps down, 15 degrees, landing gear down, fly low and slow, basically. And
he also asked for them to lower the air stairs before they took off. Okay. And Northwest told him no way because it was too dangerous. But that told us that possibly the hijacker wasn't planning on staying aboard anywhere near Reno. He was probably going to jump almost the minute he got to jump altitude.
Interesting. All right. Folks, we're talking to Robert Blevins. Excuse me, his website, adventurebooksofseattle.com, adventurebooksofseattle.com. Visit his website and also check his page out there of D.B. Cooper, and also get his book on Amazon. And he's got a special on Amazon he's going to tell you about at some point in the program, just for listeners of this program tonight. What a great guy. Robert Blevins, you're listening to the Hagmann Report. We're right back. Stay right where you're at. And by the way, tell a friend about our program. We'll be right back.
Uncertain times, it makes sense to have a sustainable backup method to cook food and boil water. If your current plan includes using a fuel-burning stove or cooking over an open fire, then there's a much better way. The Minuteman Rocket Stove is a biomass-burning cooking stove that only requires small quantities of sticks and twigs for fuel. The Minuteman Stove is easy to use, smokeless, portable, powerful, and sustainable. For the finest in survival cooking stoves and fire starters made right here in the USA, go to MinutemanStove.com. That's MinutemanStove.com.
In a thrilling series of novels, T.C. Joseph takes us into the lives of three families who struggle to maintain normal lives in a world where conspiracy theory and Bible prophecy collide. T.C. Joseph's viewpoint of alternative history and understanding of prophetic events will change your view of the world and the events on our horizon. Kirkus Review states, readers of end times fiction will be hard-pressed to find it done more intriguingly than this. Extremely readable and fast-paced. Blue Wink Reviews boldly states, fans of Tim LaHaye's Left Behind series and Tom Perrotta's The Leftovers will find this thought-provoking series absolutely riveting. Order your copies of T.C. Joseph's This Generation series from Amazon.com. Book 1, Precipice. Book 2, Pentecost. And Book 3, Penance.
Hi, I'm Grace Gonzalez from Trained Post in the Woods. We are an American family-owned company founded and built on skills and knowledge gained from responding to 18 major disasters in the U.S. and around the world. We found that most people don't have enough food and water to survive, let alone any medicinals to save their life. We're offering 25% off our must-have American Heritage Remedies kit. It contains 12 homeopathic remedies, a booklet that goes over everything in your kit, and our brand new book, Major Disasters Lessons Learned. Just enter coupon code HAGMAN. In life or a disaster, you must be able to take care of yourself. You may not be a medical doctor, and your grandmother and your great-grandmother probably weren't either, but they still knew how to minister to their family's health issues, and so can you. Check out our American Heritage Remedies kit at www.trainedpostinthewoods.com. Your life may depend on it.
Reporting on what the mainstream media won't, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on the Global Star Radio Network.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Our very special guest, Mr. Robert Blevins. He's got a website. His website is adventurebooksofseattle.com. He is, in my view, the foremost expert on the skyjacker known as D.B. Cooper. His investigative research, investigative findings, to me, are incredible. When you look at them and you balance out the information that he has developed on his own, by his own research, and compare it to what is being broadcast out there, some of the nonsense that's out there. Robert Blevins blows everything away, let me tell you. And, people might say, why is this important? Well, look, we just passed the 45th anniversary of this. And think back, if you're a Generation Xer, okay, I understand. You're not going to know any of this. If you're a baby boomer, you remember perhaps the time of the 70s. Remember the movies of the week? Oh, Terror in the Skies, and movies like that. Mystery Movie of the Week, ABC, presents. And this was really one of the earliest skyjacking in American history. Skyjacking is American history, and there was terror in the skies, obviously, with the passengers and crew of Flight 305, Northwestern Airlines. And, of course, this happened day before Thanksgiving, November 24th, 1971. And to this day, it remains the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. Well, I take issue with that, and I know Robert Blevins does as well, and we thank him for appearing on our show with us. So here we are. Now, we've just to summarize it, 2:45 p.m. Pacific time. The Flight 305 takes off, Portland to Seattle, Tacoma. A guy by the name of D.B. Cooper walks on the aircraft carrying a briefcase. Inside looks like a bomb. He's wearing a shirt and a black tie with a tie clasp, and smoking Raleigh cigarettes, drinking bourbon. Hands the stewardess a note saying, "Hey, I got a bomb here. I want $200,000 and some parachutes." Ultimately, he gets them. You heard it in the first segment of the program. And he landed at SeaTac, got refueled, passengers deplaned, all except for one of the stewardesses and the flight crew themselves, and D.B. Cooper, the man known as D.B. Cooper himself. That's where we're at. And, of course, the flight took off after getting refueled. Destination, wanted to go to Mexico City, but the terms of the flight were, flaps at 15 degrees, landing gear down, low airspeed, low altitude. And the flight crew said, "Hey, pal, look, buddy, we can't make it to Mexico City, so choose someplace else. Reno's nice this time of year." All right. So he said, "All right, we'll do Reno."
Good point.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. And he was given 4 parachutes, and he had the $200,000 in a bag. He was a little miffed that the bag was one of those, bags that the guys, what do they call them? Armored car guys carry. And it wasn't in a knapsack, and probably miffed at himself for not really saying, don't give me 23 pounds of 20s. But nonetheless, that's what he got. He got 20 non-sequential $20 bills. By the way, it was the John Mitchell, Attorney General under Nixon, who is their Department of Justice, who had recorded all the serial numbers, and that becomes important here in a little bit. So, and all these little details are kind of really significant that other places overlook and just blow off. But okay, so you've got a guy, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but you got a guy that's obviously that knows 727s, apparently knows parachutes, apparently didn't quite think about the money. Well, give him that. But nonetheless, here we are. So, and so they leave SeaTac late for the landing, of course. They leave SeaTac in the twilight of the night. And contrary to what people have heard, it wasn't a nasty, stormy, windy night. It was just like any other night. Maybe a little cold, but other than that, the weather was not an event, right?
That's right.
All right, so they're flying down toward Reno. Actually, they took off from SeaTac, and okay. So what happens next?
Well, he seemed to know planes pretty well, but we're not sure he actually knew the 727 real well, because he knew that the stairs could be opened in flight, but he didn't know how to do it. and he had to get Mucklow to kind of show him. She said, just turn this handle, and they'll drop. But he found out a couple of things, later about how that worked. But anyway, yeah, he takes the other, what was it, the main chute? No, the other reserve chute, I believe, and he pops it. Oh, there is one thing here. I guess you could call me an expert on the area, the suspect that we investigated. But as far as, there are these people out here with the minute details. They're always discussing the case, all the minute stuff about it. And on some of that, I have to defer to some of those people. They're a little bit better at that. But I have the basic things down pretty well. Anyway, so he pops this one parachute, starts cutting all these lines off it. He uses a lot of it he wraps around the hap sack or leather sack, whatever you want to call it, with the handles a whole bunch of times, gets it really tight, and he ties a line to that, and then he ties that around his waist, and he left about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 feet of slack on it,
Sure.
And Mucklow showed him how to do the handle to open the stairs, and then she went forward and joined the rest of the flight crew, and they never saw Cooper again, although he did talk to them a couple of times on the interphone. But one thing that Mucklow thought that he might make her jump, or that he was going to open the door with her back there, and she got really scared. And she said, we have oxygen on board if you need it. And he says, I know where it is, and I'll get it if I need it. And that was a clue, believe it or not, why would he say he knew where it was, and he would get it. Anyway.
Well, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know that. All right.
Mucklow asked him, well, can you cut me off some cord and I'll tie myself to one of these seats? Because when you open the door, maybe, the depression might throw me right out the door. She was pretty frightened, she said. He told her, don't worry about it, He was he depressurized the plane anyway. So she went forward and joined the crew.
Okay.
And then after that, some of it's going to be speculation, although some of it we know just from the facts of the flight. But anyway, so he probably at this point, he did communicate with the crew. They called back there. The captain called back, asked him how things are going. Everything was okay. He said, I'm fine, I'm okay, and he hung up the phone. And then he opened the stairs, and they know when he opened the stairs. There's a lot of debate about where he jumped. Maybe jumped way down by Marino. Maybe it was over the river in Portland. But Bill Radizak, the co-pilot, has told people multiple times, we know when Cooper jumped. We know where he jumped. We just don't know where he landed. That's what he's told people in interviews. Right. The reason they know is when he pulled the handle and the stairs dropped, to Cooper's surprise, they didn't drop all the way down. The airflow, the opening was only maybe 2 to 3 feet. That's it. And so you're looking at this little 2 to 3 foot gap. And when he did that, the weight of the stairs, they could feel it up forward. And they called that in, on the radio.
Sure.
And so what I think happened next was he grabbed the bank bag or the tied bag, and he took the reserve parachute, the one that did not work. They accidentally gave him a small reserve that was a trainer. It didn't open. It was sewn shut, and it wasn't found on the plane. So what we think he did with it was he just threw it out the back right away, because they never found it, and they never found the briefcase. So he may have done the same thing with that. I don't know.
Okay.
Then he took off the clip-on tie. He left it on the seat.
Yeah,
he goes. I
should point out the only thing left on the plane of Cooper's was the clip-on tie with the tie clasp, the cigarettes, and the bourbon glass the glass he was drinking with bourbon was mixed with other glasses. So they couldn't tell which one was his, but nonetheless, okay, all right. So
the popular myth, and it's been shown in movies and TV shows, I don't know how many times, is that Cooper just walked out there on those stairs and went to the bottom, and they would be dropping, by the way, from his weight when he's doing this. Mm-hmm. And he went to the bottom and he just took a big Geronimo off the end. And I don't think that's what happened at all. And neither do some other parachute experts. They say if Cooper jumped without a reserve, only a crazy person would do that. And because of the stairs only opening 2 to 3 feet, like Radizak said, because the airflow will hold them up, we think he turned around backwards and grabbed onto the rail with one hand and just backed down. He would have to lean over almost in a crawl position and back down. And as he's doing this, the stairs are dropping. And then when he got to the bottom, he grabbed the ripcord on that NB8, that C9 canopy, and pulled it. And what would happen is the parachute's going to pop out, and it's going to do a thing called squidding. And that means it flutters around, and then it's going to inflate, and it's going to pull you right off there. And it's the opening shock isn't going to be that bad, and you also know your parachute works, and off you go.
Right.
He pulled him right off the stairs. Now, when he came off the stairs, the crew felt that too, because the stairs came flying back up, and there was a light in the cockpit that tells you when the air stairs are open. And Harold Anderson, the engineer, said that the light went off for a moment and then came back on all the way to Reno and never went off again. And what that told them was the stairs bounced back up, almost closed, and the light goes off. Then they drop back down when they're, to where they're going to be naturally, and Cooper was gone. And so they marked that point, and they said, okay, that's when he jumped.
And it's my understanding it was like somewhere around 8:02 p.m. So it was early into that flight, right?
Well, yeah, I think it was more like 8:12. I think it was about 8:12. Between, there's a lot of ambiguity about it. I mean, the jet's going at 3 miles a minute. If they mark it at 1 minute and you're off by just 20 seconds, that's a mile in either direction. You know what I'm saying? So, even if they get it to the minute, that's a 3 mile spread. And from 10,000 feet or so, you can drift up to a mile each direction. So even if they pinpointed it right to the just 1 minute, you're talking about a search area that's 3 miles long by 2 miles wide. That's 10 square miles, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's so they kind of know 8:11 to 11, 8:13.
Well, okay, but it was closer to Seattle, Tacoma. It was closer to the airport. I mean, it was early on in the flight. It certainly not in the outskirts of Reno, but in the outskirts of Seattle, Tacoma, right? Would that be?
About, I'd say just over halfway between. Well, they think he jumped in the Ariel, Amboy, Washington area.
Okay. Yeah, there's a tavern, I think, in Ariel, Washington, that celebrates D.B. Cooper Day. I think that Saturday after Thanksgiving every day. Anyway, yeah. All right. So okay, that's where they think he left based on everything. So, all right. So he's gone. He's in the wind, literally, and the plane continues on to Reno, right?
That's right.
I guess let's follow the plane, and we'll get back to Cooper. So the plane goes, lands in Reno. They never did bring the floppy staircase back up. I guess when they landed, that thing was torn to shreds, right?
It got damaged a little bit. Okay. 3 sparks, they said. Wasn't too bad.
All right. And the crew got off. They didn't, and the FBI surrounded them. I mean, bottom line was that they realized that Cooper was not on board, and of course you can see the video, folks, from the interviews, contemporaneous interviews with the captain and stuff. But anything significant about that at Reno, or is that just kind of okay? That's fine. Mark that and go on. Nothing.
Well,
really
They searched the plane, even in places where people don't generally go, and they found no trace of him.
Yeah.
Briefcase was gone, the non-working reserve, the parachute he jumped with that Tina saw him put on. Let's see, that's one parachute was untouched.
Okay.
And the other one was popped over the seats where he cut the lines off of it.
Okay. All right, so now we got a missing D.B. Cooper. We got a missing guy named D.B. Cooper. He's jumped out somewhere over the Ariel, Washington area, in that vicinity. And as Robert Blevins, our guest, points out, man, it's a big area. If you don't know exactly precisely when, and there was a couple of aircraft jets that were trying to were scrambled over the flight, but that's like a needle in a haystack, given the fact that you really can't. I mean, these jets can't slow to at that time. They couldn't do much. I guess they couldn't do much, right? I mean,
they were too fast. I think they used Thunder Chief 104s,
okay.
And they had to keep doing these big S turns, and they saw the plane on radar, I guess, but they didn't see anybody leave or anything.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So okay. Here you got D.B. Cooper sailing down to Earth, ostensibly with a chute open, money, $200,000 tied to his body, free as a bird. Go figure. All right. So now the story takes a little bit of a murky turn. Robert, what do you think, or what do you think happened at this point?
Okay, I won't okay, without discussing a specific suspect yet, this is what I actually think happened. I think he jumped off the stairs by pulling, like I said, the ripcord off the stairs. And once he got on the ground, because the money was in a bag that so many people would recognize as a bank bag, that armed guards carry. I think he took off the backpack, the parachute backpack. He disconnected the harness and the canopy from it, and then he used the container. It's just like a backpack when all those things are gone. I think he took the money out of the bank bag and put it into the backpack. Now he was carrying like a Safeway-sized paper bag with him, and nobody knows what was in it, but who knows? Maybe clothes, maybe boots, maybe a map and compass. I don't know. But anyway, he had some items in there. He was in the bathroom for a long time. He may have, who knows what, I don't know what he had in the bag. I'm not even going to speculate.
I'd be in the bathroom a long time too, but for other reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
Anyway, so he gets on the ground. This is what I think he did. I think he, like I said, disconnected the canopy and the harness from the container, stuffed the money in the container, put it on his back, took the canopy and buried it right there. And there is some evidence to suggest that the FBI actually has that canopy right now. And you can ask me about that later, I guess. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. All right. So, all right.
And then he walked out. And then we think he used quarters. Back in 1971, there was a payphone everywhere. They were like at every gas station on every little country road where there was a little store or something. They got one, And I think he found the closest one and called a friend, and the friend came and got him.
Yeah, and folks, in case you're wondering, are we dragging this out? No, this is interesting. In case you're wondering, I'll just give kind of. I'm not going to give the ending away, but the bottom line is, did he get away with it? Absolutely. If Robert Blevins' investigative research is correct, and others as well, he absolutely did. He lived on. They never caught him, and although Robert Blevins does believe, and I believe that he's correct, that he knows exactly who this man is. And did he have help? Absolutely. Did others know about it? Absolutely. And did the FBI fumble this? Absolutely. So, okay. All right. And it's difficult now at this point, Robert. I'm going to kind of let you narrate or where you want to take this, because so that's really what happened. And I guess afterwards, we should note that after this happened, there were copycats, and I found this really interesting. Copycat jumpers. They actually arrested somebody who jumped, I guess, the following April, and they thought, okay, well, this guy's D.B. Cooper because of the exact same MO and all this, but no, it wasn't. So all right, but. So how do you want to go from here? Because I don't want to give away the ending, but I want you to walk through your investigative steps. Really cool, because this is really neat how you really uncovered all this stuff. So,
well, Skipp Porteous, the investigator, I told him, okay, send me. He said, I got this big package of confidential files on our suspect and friends that he knew, like that, and. I'll send them to you. You can take a look, and I would like you to hunt some of these people down, just interview them, okay. So I started looking at this stuff, and I wasn't sure. People have been trying to solve the Cooper case for years and years, and I didn't think my chances were any better than anybody else's, and I wasn't even a professional investigator. But I looked at the first name on the list was, let me think who it was. Oh, yeah, an elderly lady who lived on a place called Fox Island, Washington. It's a nice neighborhood, and it was she was a very good friend of the suspect. Okay. And so I couldn't get, she had an unlisted phone number. I couldn't get it. So I made a cold call drive to her house, and I get out there and I knock on this door. It's a waterfront, really nice waterfront cabin. And this big guy comes to the door, about 20 years old, but he looked like he played linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. I said, well, I'm here to see this lady, and he says, oh, that's my grandmother. And I told him I'm here to ask her some questions. What I was telling people at first, I couldn't just go and say, oh yeah, I'm checking out this guy because he might be D.B. Cooper. What I would do is I would give the name of the suspect and say, I'm researching a biography about his life.
Okay.
And so he goes back inside, talks to grandma, comes back out, and I was allowed in. She said, oh yeah, come on in. And we sat there and talked about the suspect for about I guess about an hour and a half. I got some pictures of her, and she was very open. I mean, she knew who the suspect was, and she had known him at the time of the hijacking. And in fact, this guy had loaned her $5,000 in cash 5 months after the hijacking, and so she could move she and her 4 children out of a house where she was staying with somebody else in Bonnie Lake, Washington, and the suspect only made $512 a month. So I kind of wondered about how he was able to do that. And then I finally admitted to her really why I was there, and she wasn't even surprised. I told her, well, we're investigating, this guy because we think he could be D.B. Cooper. She goes, oh, well, some of my friends thought he was Cooper back when it happened for a while, but he seems like such a nice guy. We just kind of wrote it off later, Okay, and I pushed over a picture of the tie that he left on board the aircraft with the tie clip.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I pushed it over to her, and it didn't have any markings on it. I said, does this mean anything to you? And she said, well, I don't know about the tie, but I've seen that clip before, and she named the suspect. I saw him wear that several times, and she says, but not after the hijacking,
Oh, okay.
So that was pretty good evidence, and from there I moved on, and I went to interview her brother, who lived up in Port Angeles, Washington. He was named by Skipp as a possible accomplice.
Okay.
So, but Skipp wasn't really sure. So I go to his house, and I give him the same story. I'm doing a bio on the suspect, and we said he was really funny though. When I came to the door, he had this other lady living with him, and all she did was look at me through the picture window for like 10 minutes. And finally, I held up my business card to her, and and then he comes to the door, and he says, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I'm doing a biography on And he goes, "Oh, him," and he named him. He goes, "Oh yeah, I worked with him in the Aleutians, and we did this and we did that, and we were friends for a lot of years, And he was telling me their adventures together, and he said, "Well, I used to work for Boeing on the 727, and also worked with the suspect, at these other places." And then he stopped. He told me all this stuff, and then he just stopped. And then he looked at me and he goes, "Why are you here again? Why are you asking about, he named the guy."
Right.
And I said, "Well, I'll be upfront here." I said, because he's a suspect in the Cooper case, D.B. Cooper case. And this guy turned white. I mean, he just went white as a ghost, and he didn't want to say another word. And he said, "I'll send you some pictures of me and him together, but I got to go."
Yeah. Okay.
He was frightened, So he went back in and just shut the door, and I went home.
Okay.
And
no, Robert,
yeah.
let me stop you
Yes.
here, because folks, remember, this hijacking was 1971, November of 1971. Yeah. So, Robert, when were you doing these interviews? What was it? I mean,
it started in the first interview I did was in let's see, January of 2009, I think.
All right. So
it pretty much went on for a year and a half.
So almost 40 years later, you're poking around and people are getting nervous, basically.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
yeah. Well, go ahead.
The important thing is also, I really should have included this. When I told him the stuff about D.B. Cooper, the first thing he did was point to his ex-wife, who lived out in Eastern Washington, and he said, "You should talk to her. They were thick as thieves. I think she helped him do it." And I thought, boy, that's a weird thing to say. I mean, you're just going to accuse your ex-wife of being an accomplice in the hijacking?
Let's throw her under the bus. Why don't we? Oh my goodness. Okay, this is great. And by the way, we're about a minute off from the break, and when we come back, and you feel free to at any time to name the suspect, because it's kind of hard to dance around the name. I suspect you're going to want to name the suspect, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Because and this is fascinating, folks, how Mr. Blevins went through this. And the History Channel stuff and the other programs, they don't do justice to this. Not even close. And even to the extent where what you're going to hear next is going to be so engaging. And trust me when I tell you that I believe that this is almost an airtight case. and the FBI has the ability to indeed solve this, or to close the books on this. We are talking with Mr. Robert Blevins, his website, adventurebooksofseattle.com. There you can you can get all sorts of information there. Bob, we got about a minute before the music starts. You've got a special offer at adventurebooksofseattle.com, or with what's your offer with books or papers? Your Kindle books.
Pretty much everything we publish for the Kindle. I think it's 14, maybe 16 publications. They've all been put on a Kindle countdown deal starting today for a week.
Fantastic. So you can get them for 99 cents, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. So special for the program, go to adventurebooksofseattle.com, but the Kindle countdown starts today. How gracious of a man to do that, offer you that material. And of course, we're talking with Mr. Robert Blevins, adventurebooksofseattle.com. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Report on this on this day before Christmas Eve, on Christmas Eve, right?
Right.
Christmas Eve. Anyway, folks, we just really getting into this, and what a fascinating story this is. 45 years ago, just celebrated that anniversary. Robert Blevins is the man, I believe, has broken the case along with Skipp Porteous, but Robert Blevins did the footwork, which you're going to hear when we come back. You're not going to want to miss, because this ties it all together, and some kick-butt investigative work, let me tell you. Stay right where you're at. The Hagmann and Hagmann Report. HagmannReport.com, HagmannandHagmann.com for show information as well.
This is Bridget from Blessed Day Ever, and I want to share some exciting news with you. JD and I have just reopened our online store, blessedayever.com, and we now accept all major credit card and debit cards. Among many new additions, we now offer t-shirts and onesies for the little ones. We are also happy to have teamed up with Jackie Hagmann to create a photography collection. For our reopening, we are offering 10% off your entire order using code HAGMANN at checkout. That's HAGMANN. What better way is there to spread God's wonderful grace than to be a living billboard for Jesus? Visit blessedayever.com, that's blessedayever.com, to take a look at all of our new collections. No coupon required to receive 10% off. Simply type in code HAGMANN prior to checkout. That's HAGMANN. Thanks for stopping by, and have the blessed day ever.
Worldwide demand is making coconuts one of the highest yielding cash crops available today. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and many high-net-worth individuals have invested billions of dollars into coconuts for strong growth and solid long-term income. Yields could be as high as 18% or more per year. Capital appreciation and exceptional income for up to 60 long years would be an absolutely brilliant investment to pass on to future generations. Diversify wisely with direct ownership of fully managed coconuts on prime farmland close to the beautiful Costa Rican border. For more information, qualified accredited investors should go to profitsincoconuts.com or phone 855-888-6288. That's 855-888-6288. This announcement does not constitute an offer to sell securities or a solicitation of an offer to purchase. Offer made by prospectus only. 855-888-6288 or visit profitsincoconuts.com. profitsincoconuts.com.
Hello, everyone. This is Joe Charles, the guy whose voice is heard announcing for the Hagmann and Hagmann Report right here on YouTube and across the Global Star Radio Network. There have been many people wondering whose music is being played during those breaks. Well, you guessed it. And we're very pleased to announce that all that music and 11 brand new songs from the CD New Jerusalem is set for release on April 10th for download on iTunes. That means you can help support my ministry and be blessed by this awesome, inspiring recording. I have been fortunate to work with some phenomenal musicians from around the world that helped us put this recording together in the studio. Simply go to joecharlesmusic.com and click on the iTunes link, or if you'd rather have a CD, we'll send one right out to you. Just leave me your email and we'll get right back to you. And thanks to Doug and Joe Hagmann for making this all possible. God bless.
This is the pre-holiday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Doug Hagmann here. HagmannReport.com. That's our website, Hagmann and Hagmann, for show information. Before we get back to Robert Blevins, I want to say this too. It's kind of funny because I got a text or an email that I guess smartphones are. I guess you can email from smartphone. I don't know. Anyway, Mary Beth R is sitting outside west of the Mississippi in a Costco parking lot, and she's saying, I blame you. I can't go in. I want to finish my shopping. I can't go in. I'm listening to this. I can't wait for more information. So Mary Beth R is going to blame us for not getting our Christmas shopping done because this is an engaging tale. So Mary Beth, just hang where you're at, or you can actually go in, do your shopping, and listen to this on archive. But nonetheless, thanks for listening. Before we get back to Mr. Robert Blevins, our guest, I want to tell you about Alex Wilson, PreciousTimber.com. Folks, go to PreciousTimber.com. Check out what they've got there. Accredited investors are investing in timber. They're investing in coconuts. In fact, you might laugh and say, oh, what are you talking about coconuts? Gilligan's Island stuff. No. Worldwide demand is making coconuts one of the highest yielding cash crops. In fact, it's got many wealthy individuals and companies are investing in coconuts, high net worth individuals and companies. It's a growth investment for long-term income. Direct ownership of fully managed coconut acreage is now available to accredited investors. You can get up to 15% per year yield. This triple bottom line opportunity generates a measurable, beneficial, social, and environmental impact along an attractive financial return. This is like a 60-year return on investment. You're talking about a gift to your children, your grandchildren. This is it. Help Precious Timber create jobs and educate children and protect our planet by growing coconuts on prime farmland close to the tropical Costa Rican border. Folks, qualified and accredited investors should go to profitsincoconuts.com or simply call 855-888-6288. That's 855-888-6288 or profitsincoconuts.com or better yet, PreciousTimber.com. And talk to Alex Wilson because this is, in these uncertain financial times, you want to hedge your bets, and this is a way to do it. Folks, I got to say this offer made by perspective only. This announcement does not constitute either an offer to sell securities or a solicitation or of an offer to purchase. Offerings. See, they're going to get me on stuttering. Offering made by prospectus only. Call 855-888-6288 or visit profitsincoconuts.com, PreciousTimber.com. Alex Wilson. You're going to be hearing more about what Alex is doing too for preppers and communities and such. Great guy. Great Christian business. Our guest, Robert Blevins, his website, adventurebooksofseattle.com, talking about D.B. Cooper. Now it's a party. So, Mary Beth, our west of the Mississippi, sitting in the parking lot at Costco. You just hang on here because now we're going to get down to the meat of the matter. All right. So, by the way, I should point out that on November, the day after Thanksgiving, the largest manhunt in U.S. history was undertaken by all sorts of people. I mean, the Army, the Armed Forces and National Guard and you name it. Everyone's looking for D.B. Cooper. I mean, they probably spent 10 times as much, right, as this guy got away with. But anyway, didn't find anything. All right, so let's go back. So now here it is, 2009. You get some information from Skipp Porteous, a PI, who's looking into this, writing a book, and you're functioning as an editor. He said, why don't you go out and interview some of the people? And he said, yeah, I'll do it. What the heck? So now you go out, Robert. You go poking the bears. You go out there not slapping people around. You go out poking the bears, asking questions, making people nervous. I love it. So, and let me one more thing before we get to it. We got to go back in time, 1971. Remember the airlines? Having some trouble, and especially Northwest. Let's set the stage here. There were strikes. Pay problems. Didn't like the money. There was layoffs and problems with the workforce and what have you. So understand now, you got to get the feel for the time. In 1971, Northwest Airlines, not a happy place for some to be working. Got to say that because what comes next is important. Robert, you pick up wherever we left off, because you're out there now in 2009, poking around, making people nervous. And if you want to tell people now, who the suspect was and is, and what you think, however you want to start, just go ahead and start.
Well, I think once people hear the name, they may recognize it from, there was a TV show it's made specifically about this individual. His name was Kenneth Peter Christiansen, and he was a Army paratrooper at the end of World War II, and he ended up serving in occupied Japan. After the war, he went back to his hometown and went back to Minnesota. That's where he was from. And he tried a couple of different jobs at first. It didn't work out. So he went to Northwest Airlines, the airline that got hijacked, and he applied, at their St. Paul, Minneapolis office. And they accepted him at first as a laborer, And the next thing he knows, he's on a flight to Shemya Island in the Aleutians. And while he was there, and what he did was he did basically whatever labor they told him to do. And his main job was helping to service the planes. Northwest Airlines had, before they started flying planes from, like, say, Los Angeles directly to Australia or Japan or anything, because they were prop planes and there was fuel limitations, they found out it was much easier if you wanted to fly from the West Coast, to go all the way across the Pacific if you actually flew north first somewhere, and then you could, like, shorten the route, because you were further north, closer to the North Pole, basically, and you could hop over to the Philippines and Japan that way. So they established a base, Northwest did, on Shemya Island. It's way out in the middle of nowhere near the end of the Aleutian chain. And Kenny was there for about 4 years. That's his name, by the way. Yeah, Kenny.
Yep.
And he worked, and while he was there, he was put under the command of a mechanic there named Bernie Geestman, And we believe that Bernie Geestman was actually the accomplice that helped Kenny pull off the hijacking. That would be like more than 20 years later, and they were still friends. And we think that those two were the perpetrators of the Cooper hijacking. That Kenny was actually D.B. Cooper, and Bernie was the guy who helped him on the ground.
All right. So folks, to be clear, Kenny Christiansen, this is a guy who worked for the airline that was hijacked. Mm-hmm. Military guy, airline employee, not really too awful pleased with the not so plum assignments, and plus the pay and things that were happening, some bad blood there, and of course, his accomplice is Bernard Wayne Geestman, Geestman. Okay, so
yeah,
and there was a relationship there, a friendship for a number of years. Okay, all right, so
yeah,
that's who. That's
well. Kenny worked on with Geestman on Shemya for about he was there about 3.5 years, which was twice as long than anybody usually stayed. Nobody knows why he decided to stay that long. Most people, the service was about 18 months, and then they somehow got out of there. But he stayed for a long time. But at the end of that time, he got tired of doing this for Northwest. So what he did was he actually took a job as a telephone operator down near Bikini Island in the South Pacific, where they were doing A-bomb tests. And actually, Kenny's family believes that his exposure to the A-bomb blast they were doing down there may have caused his death later from colon cancer,
Interesting.
So, yeah. So he did that for about 6 months, and then he came back to Seattle, and then he reapplied at Northwest. When he looked up his friend Bernie Geestman, Bernie wasn't working for Northwest anymore. He had taken I guess he was working for Northwest in Seattle now.
Okay.
But during that time, he also took some work for 2 or 3 years for Boeing, working on their 727 program. So they stayed friends, but sometimes they worked together at Northwest, and sometimes they didn't. But so years pass, and Bernie Geestman gets married to Margaret Ann Miller, and they get a house in Bonnie Lake, and Kenny got an apartment just down the hill, about 3 miles away in Sumner. And he took purser trainings and was promoted to purser, and he did just the Orient flights, out of Seattle.
All right. And this is, so he was a purser, kind of like a senior flight attendant for Northwest. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. At this time, at the end of the late 60s, Geestman was no longer working for Northwest. He actually got a job with Foss Tugs, working with them as a diesel mechanic. And anyway, so Geestman's working at Foss Tugs. Kenny's working at the airline, and there were letters coming home from Kenny during this time saying he was down to his peanut butter. He was thinking about quitting his job and coming home. They were going on strike. He had no money.
He's frustrated, man. I mean,
he's pretty frustrated.
He had 15 years in with the airline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And dead broke, and frustrated as heck. All right, so so that's Kenny Christiansen and Bernard Wayne Geestman. Okay. Kenny Christiansen as D.B. Cooper. Now, all right. So, and by the way, the individual that you interviewed in 2009 was the ex-wife of Geestman, who's the husband said, "Hey, look at her," Okay.
So I did. I drove up there. It's a long drive from where I live. It's Twist, Washington's up in the north central part of Washington, and you've got to cross 2 mountain passes to get there, each way. It's like a 500-mile round trip. I made 7 trips up there to interview her, and she right away in the first interview she told me, Bernie was involved in the hijacking. She said, yeah. Mm-hmm. But she was really tough on getting details out of, and every time I brought up Kenny's name, she'd say, oh, no, it wasn't Kenny. It was somebody else, and she would try naming these people. And then when I would check them out, they weren't even close to,
Right.
And I got the idea after a while and she admitted she and Kenny were lifelong friends. I think she was just protecting him,
So yeah. And you said you interviewed her 7 times, mm-hmm. Basically. 6. I mean, talk about persistent. The first 6 interviews, not much, and the 7th interview is a little bit different. But I want to remind people that although D.B. Cooper, and I should tell people, D.B. Cooper died in 1994. All right,
mm-hmm. That's right.
But others involved in this are still living, including perhaps Geestman, Bernie Geestman, but perhaps many others too. But okay. But so we're we are talking about people who are still alive. So all right.
Yeah, Bernie is still alive. Yeah.
All right.
And he knows that we think he's a suspect. He asked me for 6 copies of the book. I sent it to him, and he and his whole family know that he's under suspicion. And in 6 years, he's never even made a phone call to us, even though he knows where we are, to protest or say stop. I've come out with articles at newsvine.com about him,
mm-hmm.
with his picture and everything. He just doesn't say a word,
Yeah.
I mean, if it was my uncle or my father and somebody was saying this about him for years and putting out articles, I'd be calling him up,
Yeah, hey, stop it, man. Yeah, exactly.
Stop or going to court.
Well, this is funny because back in 1971, there was a statute of limitations, I believe, right?
That's true.
Okay, yeah. So if you're uncaught or if you remain on the lam and free for what? How many years? 20 years or whatever it was? Or?
No, actually, the statute on air piracy and that in 1971 was 5 years.
5 years. So okay, he had to make it to 1976, basically Thanksgiving of 1976, and he was home free.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as long as they don't find out who you are.
Right,
I mean, if they have an identity, then they can get a warrant. But
Correct.
If they don't have an identity, they can't get a warrant.
Right. But if they have no clue, so yeah. Okay. Because back in 1971 when this happened. 5 years, statute of limitation expires. You can walk into a police station and say, hey, guess what? Remember that, you're looking for D.B. Cooper? Well, that's me. Except that didn't quite work out that way, did it?
No, but it's funny and not funny at the same time. Well, what happened was the day before the statute was due to expire, and you got to remember something about Seattle in the Northwest, okay? The slightest whisper of anything D.B. Cooper, it was going to be on the night news around here, from, I don't know, Northern California all the way to Alaska. I mean, they're going to put it on TV. D.B. Cooper, any new development, no matter how small. Anyway, they would run a story. So what happened was on the day before the statute was going to expire, 2 FBI agents went in front of a friendly federal judge in Portland and managed to talk the judge into going around the statute and getting what's called a John Doe warrant based just on the hijacker. Now, the judge, they wanted a blanket warrant, like anybody that's involved, we can arrest no matter what, no statute. And the judge said, no, but I'll give you one on the one for the person that people saw on board the aircraft that did the hijacking. So they gave him a John Doe on just Cooper, you know.
Right.
And then this goes on TV. And I was trying to imagine one time, you know, Kenny or Cooper or whoever you want to call him, watching TV or hearing about it in the newspapers, that like he's probably rubbing his hands together, you know, I'm going to be free tomorrow. And then they just snatch it away, you know, almost like they did that guy in the movie Midnight Express, you know, when he said, I only had 2 weeks to go and you took it away. It was like that. And I imagine it was crushing disappointment. And if Kenny was the hijacker, I know it really was. Now, at the same time that happened, another really funny thing happened. Kenny was coming up on his 25th anniversary with the airline in '76. Even though he had a break in employment, they still counted all the years he worked there. And he got this letter from the president of Northwest Airlines congratulating him on his service and saying that they missed him at the banquet. And they sent him a pin and a silver bowl. And it came on the same day. It came to him on the same day as the hijacking statute was due to expire. I've, you know, we have the letter. You can see it.
Oh, the irony, man! I mean, think about
oh my
that.
God, you know, that was something.
Boy, talk about a kick in the you know what's, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Hey, not that I'm rooting for this guy, but you got to think this guy's he feels he was pushing around, and then he gets a 25-year hey, congratulations on your service, and then there's still a warrant out. You're not free and clear. All right, so okay, that's I just found that ironic. Okay. So what happened? All right. So you're doing interviews. You go to Bernie Geestman. Just go ahead and from here, because it's really interesting how you kind of the information you develop.
Well, the sixth time I interviewed Mrs. Geestman, she finally told me something. She said, she was trying to establish something else about her ex-husband, like he was paying himself an extra paycheck at the tug company. And she says, I can prove this because I've got a box in storage back here that's got all of his logbooks, you know. And she grabbed this box and brought it out, and there's these big logbooks for Foss Tugs that he kept. And I looked at her and I go, well, where's the one for 71? It's missing. And she said, oh, it should be there, and it wasn't there. And then she said, oh, he must have taken that during the break-in. And I said, what break-in? And she said, well, about 2 weeks after Kenny died in '94, he came up here and kicked down my doors. And she had broken doors even that many years later. She hadn't actually fixed them. She just put these locks, these hasps, you know, and locks on a couple of the doors where he broke in. And I said, what did he steal? And she said, well, a lot of pictures of he and Kenny together, some personal papers, and I guess the logbook. The reason I wanted to look at the 71 logbook was that Geestman had claimed to me and others that he had worked over the Thanksgiving holiday. And I could use the log to prove that he didn't, you know.
Well,
but I guess.
Wow, wait a second. So wait a minute. You're telling me that Geestman broke into his ex-wife's house?
Yes.
And this is in 1994, after Kenny Christiansen, D.B. Cooper, perhaps died.
Yeah.
And took pictures of him and Kenny and the materials from 1971.
That's correct.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
He did.
Okay. All right. That's
so
interesting.
Yeah, I was. Then she tells me, you know, if you really want to know, you know, you should talk to a lady named Helen Jones. She's still alive too, down in Sumner, Washington. You know, she was good friends with Kenny too, you know, and knew Bernie and everything else. So, okay, so we're right in the middle of filming the Decoded episode, the show Brad Meltzer's Decoded. Mm-hmm. Well, they did a D.B. Cooper episode, but it was actually just about Kenny. And anyway, we're in the middle of filming, so I'm running around. I'm going up to Twist. I'm having to come back for shoots and stuff. So, but I did make some time to go to Helen Jones. And when I went to, when I called her up, she said, "What is this about?" You know, and I didn't try to fudge with her. I told her, "Yeah, you know, we're checking out. Do you know Kenny Christiansen?" And she says, "Yeah." And we're checking him out as D.B. Cooper. And she says, "You know, Kenny was a really nice guy, and you have a lot of nerve, you know, trying to accuse him of a crime." She was really mad at me. and she says, "No, I won't see you." And she hangs up the phone. Well, 5 minutes later, she calls me back and says, "All right, I'll see you." You know, so I took all this material I had, pictures and the book and some other things. So I went out to see her. And she says, I'll tell you what, I want to look at the stuff you have, the evidence. I want to see what what Margie Geestman said. Why don't you just go to lunch for like an hour and then come back and leave everything? And I said, okay. And I came back an hour later, and then when I walked in, she was all different. And the first thing she said to me was, how could Kenny do such a thing? That's what she said. And,
Wow.
and she was actually more involved in the whole thing than she knew. So
Okay, Helen Jones.
I should look at my notes for this.
Yeah,
too.
she. Okay, I wrote down Helen Jones here. Why did I do that?
Let's see. This case gets complicated sometimes.
It does, man. You got lines everywhere. Was she the one? She wasn't the one that he lent the money to, right? No.
No. Let's see.
Oh no, Helen Jones is the Christiansen and Geestman would go to Helen Jones's house for Thanksgiving.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you. There's so many points on the thing with Geestman. It's hard, and Christiansen. It's hard to remember. Yes, Helen Jones was the lady that told me. She said, Kenny, Margie, and Bernie Geestman would always come to Thanksgiving dinner at her house. Okay, and they went in 1970, the year of the hijacking. And they did go again in 1972, the year after the hijacking. But on the year of the hijacking, only Mrs. Geestman showed up. And she was really mad. And she said, Bernie just came to me a couple of days ago, said he was taking this Airstream trailer he bought a while ago, and he's going camping, and he's not coming back until after the Thanksgiving weekend. And he left. So, well,
yeah.
Anyways, and then she also said that 6 weeks after the hijacking, she saw Kenny at a laundromat in Sumner. And she asked him, she said, did you go back to Minnesota to see your family? Because we missed you at Thanksgiving. He said, no, I was with Bernie. And she said, well, what were you guys doing? And he wouldn't answer her. So,
Yeah.
so we know they were together. We know where they were together over the whole week. Mrs. Geestman had finally admitted in her very last interview, yes, it was Kenny, it was with Bernie. Because I went back to her on interview 7. I said, look, your friend Helen Jones told me all this stuff. And she says, okay, it was Kenny. He was with Bernie that weekend. I said, when did they come back? When did they leave? When they come back? And she said, well, I think he left on the Tuesday. That'd be like I think the day before the hijacking.
Right.
He left on a Tuesday. He came back the following Monday.
So ostensibly they were camping together, Bernie and Kenny, and they were just MIA basically for that time period.
Well, well, in order to get the trailer, he didn't have it parked at his house in Bonnie Lake. Mr. Geestman had bought a trailer and a station wagon about 6 weeks before the hijacking. And what he did was he had the shop property down in Oakville. It's off of Interstate 5, about halfway between Portland and Seattle. And he parked it at the shop property and brought the wagon back to Bonnie Lake. His wife said, you leave that there, it's going to get broke into. He says, don't worry about it. Okay, so, and so in order to get the trailer, for him and Kenny to get the trailer, they've got to be in the car together and go to Oakville. And I think from there, we think what really happened was they probably sat in the trailer during the night making plans and whatever and having a bourbon or something, I don't know. And then Bernie drove him to the airport the next day.
Okay, all right, and it is speculated.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, that the hijacking was planned by Kenneth Christiansen and Bernard Geestman, probably the previous summer at Geestman's house in Bonnie Lake. And now this brings up an interesting point that you had mentioned early on that the bomb itself was composed. It looked like there was something red that the flight attendant or the stewardess said, hey man, it's a bomb, and a red stick or whatever. Now, in your process of interviewing, you had found that Bernard Geestman's niece saw something in his shop. Do you want to get into that? But we got about 2 minutes before the end of the bottom of the hour.
Okay, couple of weeks before. After the Decoded show came out, some members of Geestman's family had seen the show, and they knew that Bernie had lied on a couple of points in the show, so they started calling me. And eventually, I sent them a preliminary report by email, and then they got a hold of me again and said, can we meet? So I met with the niece, the niece's son, and the son's girlfriend, and we talked for about 2 hours in Sumner at a restaurant. She said, She walked in on Kenny in a shed out back of the Geestman place a couple of weeks before the hijacking. He was taking filled quarter coin rolls, 2 at a time, putting them end to end and taping them up with red electrical tape and then putting wires to them. But she didn't really, he told her, you're not supposed to be in here, so she left. She was 13 at the time. But she didn't ever associate that with the hijacking until after she saw the Dakota show.
Isn't that interesting? Go figure, you know. We're talking to Robert Blevins. His website is adventurebooksofseattle.com, adventurebooksofseattle.com. And he has put together a special for the show. I mean, it's great. His Kindle countdown. Go to adventurebooksofseattle.com. Check out the Kindle, Amazon Kindle countdown special that he's got. Everyone should just grab the documentation, the books that he's got. It's fantastic. This is so fascinating, and I can just imagine being 13 years old, walking in on my into the workshop there, and seeing Bernie Geesman's niece seeing the construction of fake bombs, and Bernie saying, "Hey, get out of here! You're supposed to be in here." Yeah, and then of course years later, as we're talking now, into this century, is a brand new century, she says, "Oh, that's what he was doing." Yeah. Okay. Now it makes sense. You can't make this stuff up, folks. This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And see, this is the stuff. Hey, FBI. This guy right here, Robert Blevins. You got to call him and you got to his stuff. Okay? You can figure this out, FBI. Listen to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Christmas Eve with Robert Blevins. We're going to be right back. Stay right where you're at. All right, Mary Beth, you can go ahead and go to Costco.
Never look at your city, town, or its people the same way ever again. Stained by Blood, a murder investigation based upon a true story by private investigator Douglas J. Hagmann. Using the character Mark Stiles, Hagmann takes you on a journey behind the scenes where the homicide becomes secondary to an underworld of satanic ritual abuse, child abduction, and even mind-controlled experimentation. A world dismissed as conspiracy by those who want to keep its secrets hidden, exposing the dangers, denials, and deceptions. For 5 years, a brutal killer remained on the loose, free to kill again. As Mark struggles to navigate the maze of bizarre twists and untangle a web of deeply hidden secrets kept by some of the most powerful and influential people in his community and beyond. Stained by Blood. Order your copy of this engaging novel today at hagmanandhagmann.com and click on the link. Stained by Blood.
Color. It's one of the most powerful tools used to entice and engage people. Color affects your mood, evokes emotions, and communicates in ways words can't. In fact, people are 80% more likely to remember what they read when it's in color. Isn't that reason enough to have us print all your promotional materials in full color? And when it comes to full color printing, you need a reliable go-to partner, an expert, someone who understands your business, helps you connect with customers, and can offer up a huge selection of products. Someone, well, like us. Our expert knowledge in color and printing is exactly what you need to build brand awareness, look professional, and stand out from the competition. Give us a call today. We're more than happy to provide you with additional information on your next full-color print marketing project. As your dedicated full-color sales team, we look forward to hearing from you.
In these uncertain times, it makes sense to have a sustainable backup method to cook food and boil water. If your current plan includes using a fuel-burning stove or cooking over an open fire, then there's a much better way. The Minuteman Rocket Stove is a biomass-burning cooking stove that only requires small quantities of sticks and twigs for fuel. The Minuteman Stove is easy to use, smokeless, portable, powerful, and sustainable. For the finest in survival cooking stoves and fire starters made right here in the USA, go to MinutemanStove.com. That's MinutemanStove.com.
Reporting on what the mainstream media won't, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on the Global Star Radio Network.
That's going to cause a stir.
And welcome back, folks, to the final segment with Robert Blevins. His website. If I can talk tonight, man, must be that holiday eggnog. Anyway, Robert Blevins, his website, Adventure Books. See what I mean? AdventureBooksOfSeattle.com. AdventureBooksOfSeattle.com. He's really a great guest, and he's a fascinating guy. Just done a lot of research on D.B. Cooper. And I'm going to tell you, not here. I'm going to lean out here. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm looking right at the camera here, pointing at the camera to the FBI. I'm going to tell the FBI something, all right? You need to call this guy. You need to call Robert Blevins. Be nice to him, because we're watching, but here's the deal. You guys have done you guys screwed up. I mean, or didn't, I don't know if you screwed up, but the fact of the matter is, look at the evidence Mr. Blevins has developed, and Skipp Porteous, and look at the evidence, because the evidence is clear. Don't be telling the American public that you close this case out. Robert, welcome back. Why did the FBI, what's the status, and I'm going on the turn here, but what's going on with the FBI? They shut down the case here, or what?
Well, they ran the last special they ran on D.B. Cooper on History Channel was about a guy named Robert Rackstraw. He got a lot of publicity. The only problem with Robert is he was only 27 years old at the time of the hijacking, and he's got blue eyes. And for me, that wrote him off right away. The show came off as one big joke. Okay. Now, about 2 weeks after that, the FBI made a blanket announcement, and a lot of people got an email from, including me, that said, we're no longer going to investigate the Cooper case. It's closed. We haven't found any of the suspects suitable. That's it. Okay, fine. And I think maybe anyway. So and then about that happened in, I think, early July. And so about 5 weeks later, I start getting these emails from a gentleman named Troy. We'll call him Troy B. And he was telling me a totally different story that was so unreal. At first, I didn't believe him. I had to check it out. And now he gave me the name of him and his two friends and their phone numbers and the places where they worked, and they lived in the D.C. area, in the Washington D.C. area, and they're all civilian employees for the U.S. government. Troy himself is an engineer working in new product development for the Navy. He has security clearance, and so his two friends. So anyway, these three guys get together in the first week of August and decide to carpool to a Washington Nationals game. And on the way, one of Troy's friends picked up a fourth guy. Now, Troy didn't know the fourth guy, but it turns out he was an FBI agent, a senior agent too, who worked in behavioral profiling at Quantico. Mm-hmm. So all four of these guys are going to the game, and Troy's kind of fascinated. He's never met an FBI agent before, and the agent talks about, I mostly worked on murders, like this. And so they get to the game, they watch the game. After the game, they go to a restaurant for a bite to eat on the way home. And Troy, just out of the weirdest coincidence, had seen the Decoded Show, and not only that, but he had read the book Into the Blast about Kenny, so he couldn't help himself. He just asked the agent, he goes, I heard you guys closed the case a little while ago. And the agent, I'm going to give you his name. His name is John Jarvis, okay? John Jarvis, you can look him up. He's got a profile at FBI.gov. John Jarvis said, yes, we closed it. He says the reason we did it is because we knew who the hijacker was, and he's dead anyway. And Troy, he told me his heart started beating really fast. So he said he just looked at the agent, and he goes, Kenny Christiansen, and the agent nodded at him. And it was like he didn't want to answer verbally, and the other two guys started listening too. And Troy goes, Kenny, you're sure, Kenny? And the agent nodded again, and then he held up his hands, both palms. I don't know if your viewers can actually see me, but like this, and he touched down, like that. And then that was all he would say about it.
So they know.
Now this is now before I was going to go around and name an FBI agent nationally, that the FBI has basically lied or concealed about this. I actually checked out Troy and his two friends.
Right.
And there was a couple other people he gave as references, and I contacted these people and I established, yes, they were all who they said they were. They lived where they said they were. They worked where they said they were, and they had security clearances. Yes. So I think I consider them excellent witnesses, and I believe Troy. I do.
All right. So you checked their story out. I mean, obviously, so okay.
Thoroughly, yeah. Before I was going to go out on a limb with that, because I didn't want the FBI come pounding on my door, like the next day.
Well, yeah, and that's good. And folks, there's so much more. And your book, Into the Blast, is still relevant. I mean, but also go to the Kindle Countdown as well on via adventurebooksofseattle.com and take advantage of that as well. But I forgot to tell you this, Bob, and I didn't know this until just this last break here. We're only going to be good for about the next 15 minutes. Because of the holiday issue, we have to break at the 5:0 mark. But okay, so we can do it though. We can do it. So we got 14 minutes to wrap this up. Go ahead and.
Well, there is something I think all of your listeners and viewers should know, and that's it's really hard to explain the story about Kenny, on a radio show. Yeah, I mean, all the different stuff about it. The easiest way to do it, we have actually made the same exact report, unredacted, unedited, 54 pages with pictures, images. It's a PDF, and you can actually download it at adventurebooksofseattle.com. If you go there to the D.B. Cooper page, or I think there may be even a link on the homepage, but somewhere there, you can download the entire report for yourself. You can look at it, you can print it up, you can study it. I don't even care if you try to contact some of the people, that's up to you. But I mean, it's out there. It's been out there with the public for months. So there's also a condensed version I believe you can do. But yeah, we're not hiding anything,
This is amazing too when you think about this. So where'd the money go? What happened to the money? What happened to Kenny? Kenny, obviously. What happened to Kenny?
Well, okay. After the hijacking, as far as we know, he didn't spend any of the money until at least the following April, about 5-6 months. By that time, as FBI agent Larry Carr has mentioned on the radio, the Northwest banks had given up the search. Most of them gave up within 3 months because they were asking tellers to compare 10,000 different numbers off of a paper list that weren't even in order to every 20 they got. And I'm surprised they even did it for 3 months. But by 6 months, nobody was. So, pretty much you could spend the money at your leisure after that. What we think happened, well, some of the money he used, let's see. Now, there was a report that he bought a house for cash. That's not exactly true. He assumed a mortgage for half the price, and the other half he bought on a promissory note with the owners for half the price of the house. Ann and Joe Grimes, those were the former owners. And amazingly enough, Bernie Geestman, who denied knowing anything about how Kenny got his house, was the best man at the Grimes wedding. Okay, so we're not believing him a bit on that. We think that Bernie put the Grimes couple together with Kenny in July of 1972 and said, this is a guy who works at the airline, makes plenty of money, you can trust him. And so they let Kenny sign to assume half the mortgage on the house, or half the price, and the rest of it went on the promissory note. And when I interviewed the Grimes' son, because the Grimes are no longer around, he told me his dad was a cash on the barrel head kind of guy and wouldn't have waited a ton of years to get his money. We also know that Kenny invested money in certain lots, land around the Bonnie Lake Sumner area later. He changed the way he dressed. He used to dress real sharp when he was off work, and he put on weight. He started dressing like a farmer, more or less. He quit going to union meetings in Northwest. He continued to work there, and nobody suspected him. And Himmelsbach, the FBI agent, has admitted that, no, they never even thought it could be inside job, and they never looked at employees at all. And I think Kenny just kind of slipped through the cracks,
Just an unassuming guy. Just, yeah. And when
yeah.
he died, he left an estate, a pretty sizable estate, didn't he?
$180,000 in cash, I think, and $20,000 in the savings account, and a coin and stamp collection, gold and silver coins and stamps. It was worth about $40,000, but the family got it and they sold it for $20,000.
And we're talking $94 here.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the most amazing things that happened in the later end of the investigation, though, was definitely when Scott Roll of the History Channel show Decoded went up into the attic at Kenny's old house and found that box. Somebody had taken one of the things Helen Jones told me about Kenny is when he moved into his new house, he replaced all the kitchen countertops, and they were white. And the attic, you can't access it at Kenny's house. It's very difficult. You have to go up the side of the house and unscrew this thing and go in. And they used a infrared scanner on Decoded to look, and they found a cold spot in the attic. So Scott Roll crawls up down a ladder. He moves the insulation away, and surprise, here's this white piece of countertop board sitting on top of between two joists, and then somebody had nailed a couple other boards sideways to make this box. And we actually think that's where Kenny hid the money.
And you have that board, right?
Yeah, I got permission to take it home.
Robert Blevins has got the board, perhaps, that the money was stashed. Okay, well, that's interesting. And of course, Bernard Geestman, he's still sucking air somewhere. Perhaps even listening to this program. Bernard, if you're listening to the program and you want to talk to Robert Blevins, well, hey, there you go. Okay, so, all right. What about the money that was there? There was $5,800 found in the Columbia River back in 1980, was it 1980?
Yes, January.
Right. What's the story on that?
Well, that's one of the most debated things about the D.B. Cooper case. People argue about it all the time. Some people think the flight was way miles to the west, and Cooper jumped out over the Columbia there, and that's how the money ended up. I don't believe that for a second. I pointed out to people that if the radar, the SAGE radar and the other radar they used to follow the plane was that inaccurate when they made the flight path map for the FBI, that planes would be crashing into each other all the time. The money was found at least 6.5 miles west of where Cooper jumped, or where the flight path was. So, and there's no river delivery to that spot unless he jumped in the Columbia down in Portland, and the flight crew says no way, he was gone by then. And so how did it get there? There's no other way for it to go there by water. Citizensleuths.com is where you want to go if you want to know anything about the money or the physical evidence. These are 3 people, all professionals, who were allowed by the FBI to examine the evidence, and they have a comprehensive website report with pictures. They think it was done. They think human intervention was involved.
Right.
I think it was, since the money obviously did not sit out for 9 years. At least that's what sleuths say. I think it was done after the statute of limitations was supposed to expire, and it was. I don't think somebody went to Tina Bar. It's private property. The Fazio brothers own it. It's they have operations going there. I think what happened was that the hijacker put some money into like a paper bag or something and threw it into the Columbia River, hoping somebody would find it. And what probably happened to it is it probably just sank somewhere in the area of where it was found, and they did dredging there, and it was dredged up onto the beach. Now, some pieces would be in shards and buried. They found that. And one bundle, though, was 3 of the bundles stuck together. That's my personal theory on how it got there. I think it was a red herring done by the hijacker.
Yeah, I agree. As I went over other, the website you're talking about and other websites, it just, they had, there's nothing that would suggest that it was there since 71. All right. Well, wow. This is just amazing. I'm going through my notes, see if we missed anything else. Robert, is there anything else that we missed here? I mean, there's so much more to this, though. I mean, we could talk 2 days on this stuff, but
yeah, that's true.
John Carr, the FBI agent right now.
His name is. Oh, you mean
Larry Carr? Larry Carr.
He's no longer the guy. The last person they had was Thomas Eng, E-N-G, but I don't think they have an agent assigned anymore.
Okay.
But the only agent that really counts is an agent and works out of Quantico, who's been there for 15 years working in behavioral profiling, who told 3 witnesses, John Jarvis, Special Agent John Jarvis, okay? And you can look that, you should write that name down because you can find him at FBI.gov. Allegedly, he told 3 very good witnesses the real reason why the FBI closed the case. And one more quick thing I want to bring up. Have you ever heard about the Amboy parachute?
Yeah.
Now, back in 2008, some kids found a scrap of a parachute sticking out of the ground on their farm down in Amboy. It's right in the prime drop zone where Cooper was. And so the FBI comes rushing down there. They dig up this parachute. It's got no container. It's got no harness, right? Okay, just like I said earlier, that the hijacker probably buried the canopy and used the container to haul the money out, right? And the FBI brings the chute back. They take pictures of it. It's all over the media. And the head of the Seattle FBI said it was found in the right place. It's the right color. It's the right size, and we're going to check it out. A week later, they say it's not the chute, and they dismissed it. And the only reason they wouldn't say why. They just said, oh, by a preponderance of the evidence. Baloney. I went back to the FBI 3 years later and asked them, what criteria did you guys use to dismiss the chute, the Amboy chute? And they said, we can't talk about it. It's evidence in an ongoing case. And they told me that twice. And they just wouldn't give me an answer. And they didn't give anybody an answer. Nobody in the media, nobody knows why they dismissed it. But the only person who actually looked at it, they said experts examined it. I found out they only talked to him by phone. Only person who saw that parachute was Earl Cossey, the parachute packer guy. And since he had lied so many times to the media over the years about that he owned them and he delivered them, I don't trust him identifying any chute as Cooper's, because if he says this chute's Cooper's, it's going to come out sooner or later that he lied about the other stuff. So I don't consider him a good witness.
Okay.
I think the FBI just put the chute away, and figured it's Cooper's.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And one more time with Margaret Ann Geestman, right? She was the ex-wife of Bernard, and you interviewed 7 times. We should note, her status right now. After your 7th interview, after the History Channel ran the show, or that January 2011.
Yeah, that's right.
Was she packed up her ranch, sold her for $500,000, and she's in the wind, right?
That's exactly what happened. She it was about a year after the show aired, the book came out. She sold her ranch. She told her bank officer, and I can release these names because they're in the report. She told her bank officer, Dave Thompson of Winthrop, Washington, told him not to tell anybody where she was going. She told the same thing to her then lawyer, S. Renee E. Waltz, and she's out of Oroville, Washington. She won't even answer my emails. And she told the lawyer, don't say where I'm going. And, and then she moved. Well, she died a couple of months ago, I found out just recently. Oh. And she left all that money she had to her nearest kin. And it turns out that her nearest kin is a woman about 72 years old who just did a 10-year stretch for armed robbery in Michigan and just got out. I looked at her, her record, it's public, on the Michigan Department of Corrections. Yeah. I didn't know what to think, okay, whatever.
Oh, it just gets better and better.
It really does.
Oh man. Well, you know what? A message to the FBI, folks. Mm-hmm. I mean, Robert Blevins has got the information. You really need to talk to Mr. Blevins for all of the information and check the evidence. I mean, look, folks, it does appear to me Kenny Christiansen is D.B. Cooper. Bernie Geestman, more than likely, is the guy that helped him. And, of course, all the information can be found at Mr. Blevins' website, adventurebooksofseattle.com. It's been a pleasure having you on, my friend. It really is. It's what a great story.
Well, thank you.
Man. Well, thank you. And we're going to be following this really close, and we need to be holding the FBI accountable for only because you did the work. I mean, my goodness, take the evidence and process.
Well, yeah. What about testimony of John Jarvis? I mean, what about that? They're going to try to say he didn't say that. I had 3 witnesses with their names and everything. I mean, what about the Amboy chute? Are they going to keep sweeping that under the carpet? I mean, if it isn't evidence, and you dismissed it back in 2008, why can't you say why? And where is it now?
That's right. That's right. Well, my brother, we've reached the time limit here. I got to say, it's been a pleasure, and really had a great time tonight talking about this. And I got an email from Bob Maggie, who got your book online, and said thank you so much for the price break on that. And so thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Wish you a Merry Christmas and a safe and prosperous New Year.
Merry Christmas to you.
All right, folks. That was Robert Blevins. His website, of course, check it out. I mean, wow, adventurebooksofseattle.com. Check out the D.B. Cooper page. That guy is a marvel. I mean, you talk about having it all there. It's there. So we want to extend a really warm thank you to him for all that he's done. Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready to really shut down for the Christmas holiday. I did mention that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do a show on Christmas Day. Okay, I'm just going to tell you that right now. Christmas Day night. Definitely not tomorrow, unless something breaks. I'm trying to work out the logistics of that. A couple of things happened today that kind of prevented me from really making a firm commitment. But check our website, hagmannreport.com, especially if you're alone this Christmas. If you are alone, you want to tune in. I really am concerned. I really want to be there with you.